Hello everyone, my name is Brad Grew and welcome back for another episode of the Microsoft Today podcast. Today's episode is January 15th, 2019, including discussions on Microsoft's many education initiatives, such as background with Bill Gates, Khan Academy, Microsoft Imagine, Microsoft Small Basic, Kodu and Kodu Game Lab, Project Spark, MakeCode, Microsoft Store STEM Saturdays, Flipgrid, Duolingo, the goals of the Microsoft 365 education platform, including Office 365, Skype in the Classroom, Microsoft Teams, Skype Translator, OneNote Class Notebooks, Microsoft Research, Minecraft, Microsoft Innovator Educators, Microsoft 365 hardware, federal and state grant funding, Microsoft Inclusive Learning for all students, Intune for education, and much more. So stick around, and after this short break, we'll dive into the show. Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a few questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other places people like to listen? How do I make money from my podcast? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors too, so you can get paid to podcast. Seriously, if you've ever thought about starting a podcast, now's the time to do it. Anchor makes it that easy. I've had an idea for this podcast for years, and I've finally just gotten around to doing it, and I regret not getting started earlier. So don't be that guy. Don't be like me. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Microsoft Today podcast. Like an ongoing trend I seem to have with our episodes, they're kind of morphing from what I thought would be one segment into a full show. And today's show is about Microsoft 365 education and then Microsoft's efforts within the education space. And while today's discussions are mainly geared towards K through 12 education, some of the education will obviously overlap with continuing education and then education for professionals and young and college students as well. For the most part, our discussions today are geared towards Microsoft's initiatives within the K through 12 space and how they're trying to compete with Google in that space. For those that don't know, Google is Microsoft's main rival within the K through 12 space. Google's Chromebooks and the G Suite apps are a very low-cost option for educational spaces. Also, there's some legacy competition from Apple with iOS and the iPads, but that's not so much large scale any longer. There have been quite a few scandals regarding iOS and iPads and school districts. If you're interested in learning more about that, just look up Los Angeles ISD and their scandal with the iOS and iPads and things sort of that. Just think iOS is a premium product. iPads are a premium product, and that's just going to be extremely cost prohibitive for most schools, especially public schools. And then also, they don't actually have an ecosystem and a platform built on top of iOS other than apps. And the apps are generally from third parties, whereas Google and Microsoft both have word processing and spreadsheets and presentation software and cloud drives and those sorts of things that they're built on top of that. Apple has a little bit of that, but they're not the competition for Microsoft in this space. The main competition for Microsoft in this space is Google. So a lot of what we're discussing today is Microsoft versus Google and how they're standing apart from Google and how they're kind of standing on their own in that regard as well. And I should also state that many of the conversations we're going to have today will be in regards to K through 12 education within the United States, but that does not mean that these programs are not available outside of the United States. I'm just familiar with what the United States offers and what the education initiatives within the United States are. Obviously, the United States has an interesting dynamic that most countries don't have when it comes to education because we have spending at both the federal and the state level and even at the city and county level sometimes, depending on the state. And so just know that much of the discussion we'll be having will be in regards to the United States, but these initiatives and programs and applications and platforms, they're available worldwide to a great number of people and a great number of educational institutions. Just keep that in mind, kind of as a little disclaimer that this is, a little asterisk for the United States, but most of these things will also be available within your home country. And the final line item before we start, I just also want to say that while this is focusing on the K through 12 education and some of this will overlap with continuing education, I'm actually in the process of writing a podcast for the continuing education that we've kind of already touched base on with as far as certifications and online training. So the next episode we have will be in regards to those seeking continuing education. But stay tuned because there's a lot of great information within this podcast, especially if you would like to know more about how Microsoft is working within this space. It should also be worth your while if you have young children within your life that you would like to make sure that they're embracing these technologies, that their schools are embracing the technologies the best they can, whether it's a son or daughter, a niece or nephew, a granddaughter, a grandson, or truthfully any grade school children within your life that you'd like to possibly set them up for success within these platforms and these programs. So with the disclaimers and the overview out of the way, now we can get started.
Up in the morning and out to school, the teacher is teaching the golden rule. American history and practical math, you study them hard and hoping to pass.
Oh yeah, and then like a little classic Chuck Berry to get us kickstarted with some schooling. We about to get our education on. I really want to do this podcast because I know there are a lot of really passionate and talented people within the education space who are utilizing Microsoft's tools and tool sets to teach our youth of America, teach our future, to teach them in ways that have never really been taught before. I thought it'd be great to discuss these awesome programs and awesome platforms that Microsoft has given us and has given our students and given our educators, and kind of go from there and hopefully by the time we get done with this podcast, you have a better understanding of everything that's available. And then maybe that's something that you can utilize for your child or your local school district or something along those lines. Over the past few podcasts, we've discussed how Microsoft is empowering developers and empowering IT professionals and empowering folks in the technology space. Now they are doing very much the same thing, but for students and educators. They're empowering educators and they're empowering students. And as we go through this history of the products that they've built within the education space and that are now available, and the acquisitions and things from within that space, you'll hopefully get an understanding of how they're doing that, how they're able to provide a unique and engaging and empowering platform for students. And the big thing, you will actually hear from some students within a recording where they talk about having a voice. And the big thing is for them having a voice and them having a say in how they're being educated. And you'll also hear from educators who say that whenever you give kids these technologies, they kind of open up out of their shell and they embrace the technology, which helps them think outside the box and then actually be more productive and be more proactive and be more engaging. And it really is, once you see all the pieces in place, it's quite exciting. I actually responded to some education tweets from my hashtag Microsoft EDU last week. These kids these days, they have it made, and like I kind of wish I could go back and start over grade school again and deal with all these awesome things that they're doing. So hopefully you'll agree by the end of this that Microsoft is doing some fantastic things, and you'll want to get involved however you can to help educate our future generations. I had thought about doing a long history of Microsoft's technology focus over the years, kind of like last podcast where we went through their acquisition history dating back to the early 80s. To keep this podcast hopefully under about an hour, we don't really have time to do that, so we're only going to go back about 10 years, and we're just going to start with Bill Gates. We're not only going to start with the company and how they've had a director. We're going to start with Bill Gates and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and how they've had two primary areas of focus, which Bill discusses with Ellen right now.
All right, so let's talk about this. So you've already put $40 billion of your own money into your foundation.
Yep.
$40 billion. What is your main focus right now?
My wife Melinda and I picked global health as our big thing. Coming up with new drugs and vaccines and getting them out to all the kids in the world. That's our main thing. Mm-hmm. Our second biggest thing is all in the U.S., which is trying to help improve the education system here.
So how do you do that?
Well, there's some really phenomenal teachers, and so the dream is that you could take that top 10% and have them help the others to get best practices, the best teaching ideas to spread all over the country.
And how, we're listening to you, obviously $40 billion does a lot, and there are other people that are helping, but what can we do? What is the best thing that you could say that just one person can do to help?
Well, particularly with schools, the ability to go to the local public school or charter school and engage with the kids, mentor kids, talk about the kind of work you do. There's huge opportunities there. With the challenges, say in Africa, part of it's people's voice. There's a real question now whether the U.S. sort of takes this less than 1% of our budget that saves tens of millions of lives, and whether we don't prioritize continuing that. So it's a hot debate, in terms of, is it good for America to be generous and help the rest of the world live a healthy life?
So I'd like you to focus on two things that Bill Gates said there. First, his main focus for education is through the educators. Bill Gates and Microsoft as an extension feels that empowering the educators to better prepare their students is the single most important aspect of improving education across the board within the United States. And the second thing he mentions is to get involved. And so that's what this podcast is here today. Hopefully we all learned today that we could be proactive and we could be involved. We could take a leadership role and lead by example when it comes to education with the United States. And then also to let the leadership know within our local education systems that there are tools out there that are likely better than the tools they're currently using for enabling our teachers and our students to succeed long term, which of course would then secure the long-term future and success of our city and our state and our country as a whole. With that said, I'm going to give a little bit more background about Bill Gates and his stance on the education system within the United States and some other interviews and other speeches that he's given in regards to those. That will hopefully kind of piece together this puzzle of Microsoft's outlook for the education system. So this next clip is about 6 years old, but it's still relevant to this day, and it actually took place at the Summit for Innovation in Education. Bill was on a panel with some other leaders within the education space to discuss kind of where America was from the educational perspective. So let's listen to this clip.
Starting with you, Bill, you've written about 4 or 5 things that are going to be transformative, but let me start with the first one you talked about, which is reimagining textbooks. How do you think that's going to change and make personalized education?
Well, if you get pervasive digital devices, very cheap tablets, and pervasive internet connection, then one can imagine eliminating the paper-based textbook. And an interactive textbook is a very different thing. In fact, the boundary between quiz, lecture, textbook is basically eviscerated. You can track the student, bring in a video, ask them a few questions to keep them engaged. And the invention of what that multimedia educational thing, call it the future textbook, but it's really all those things brought together. We're in the process of figuring out what that is right now. And there's a lot of innovators, for-profit, non-profit innovators who are participating in that.
How do you think there'll be just a totally disruptive transformation of how we do curricula, or do you think textbooks will then just be put in digital form?
Well, we want to be a little conservative about this because, in a sense, every time something new comes along, they say education will change. Textbooks came along, anybody could read them. We got TV sets, we got videotape, we got computer-aided instruction. And so far, technology, at least in the classroom, has had absolutely no effect. So the issues of motivation, why should I learn this? Am I the person who's good at this? There's so much complex human motivation in the learning process that to say that just to mechanize the pieces, like, okay, just click on the lecture, we don't need the lecture. The actual usage of things like MIT OpenCourseWare is mind-blowing for one reason. Basically, nobody uses it. I mean, take the very best Walter Lewin physics course, which is the 3rd one up there. About 3,000 people have gone through the thing. And it's free. It's fantastic. I love the guy. There's no market for people at home at night saying, oh, yeah, how do those wave equations work? Without a job, a degree. Mm-hmm. So far, this whole hey, it's online, therefore it'll be utterly different. There's been as many failures as successes. Now, I think some of the stuff that Saul and Bro are involved in are going to be amazingly successful. So I do think this time is different.
Bill, how does that change the role of the teachers and help you scale good teachers?
Well, what we'd really like to know is, why is it so hard to get kids motivated around these things? I mean, after all, it's really in the kids' interest to get a high school degree and get a college degree. It's not just that you make more money. You meet more interesting people. Everything is better about that path in life. And so our failure to convince them to help themselves in that way, it's very disappointing. And the U.S. statistics are horrific. We doubled what we put into education over the last 20 years, and our output did not improve at all. And other countries, on the other hand, have done very, very well. So as for younger students, there's going to be a structured environment where a teacher is there supervising them quite a bit. One of the most interesting things, a conference Saul and I went to, we heard about a thing called the Alliance School, which is a charter school in California, which in the U.S. is where most of the good experimentation takes place. They have a class of 48, but when they asked the kids what they liked about the class, they said, oh, it's so small and personal. Well, it's because they have 16 with the teacher, 16 doing peer education. And peer education, where you have kids to help other kids, that is a coming thing. And figuring out how to technologically help those kids group together and make that work, that is super powerful. It's also very cheap. And then they have a final group of 16 where they're just looking at Khan Academy type content, playing some of the math game things. And so you do math by rotating through the 3 different experiences, and their results are way better than a class of 25 done the normal way.
Just keep in mind that this interview was in May of 2012, so Bill is talking about some things doesn't necessarily hit on all cylinders with it, but for the most part he does. Yes, online courses are kind of hard to engage with, and so you need that interactive part of it, which is kind of like what they've done with edX and those sorts of things. But from the get-go, he talked about how you need to have an interactive experience for the students, which is kind of what the charter schools were doing at this time. They had a dynamic classroom that wasn't, every day was kind of different, and they're learning from each other, they're learning from online resources, they're learning from the teacher. It's a dynamic shift. Now, fast forward 6.5, 7 years now, and with all of the cool tool sets that they've built and the platforms that they built, and he talked about that during the discussion, that they don't know what those were at that time, but they do now. Those things are what we're going to talk about next, about this Microsoft EDU platform and how they've come from this vision Microsoft had to where they are now, and where they are empowering students and educators to learn in a dynamic way and to be engaged and to be proactive and to just overall have a better learning experience. But before we move on to the actual aspects of the learning program, I'm going to have one more clip from Bill Gates, and this is from his TED Talk, where he goes on to talk about teachers again. So I hope you notice that within all these 3 clips I'm playing you from Bill Gates, every single one of them, he's talking about educators.
We all need people who will give us feedback. That's how we improve. Unfortunately, there's one group of people who get almost no systematic feedback to help them do their jobs better. I'm talking about teachers. When Melinda and I learned how little useful feedback most teachers get, we were blown away. Until recently, over 98% of teachers just got 1 word of feedback: satisfactory. Today, districts are revamping the way they evaluate teachers, but we still give them almost no feedback that actually helps them improve their practice. Our teachers deserve better. The system we have today isn't fair to them. It's not fair to students, and it's putting America's global leadership at risk. Now, out of all the places that do better than the US in reading, how many of them have a formal system for helping teachers improve? 11 out of 14. The US is tied for 15th in reading, but we're 23rd in science and 31st in math. So there's really only one area where we're near the top, and that's in failing to give our teachers the help they need to develop their skills. Let's look at the best academic performer, the province of Shanghai, China. Now, they rank #1 across the board in reading, math, and science. And one of the keys to Shanghai's incredible success is the way they help teachers keep improving. They make sure that younger teachers get a chance to watch master teachers at work. They have weekly study groups where teachers get together and talk about what's working. They even require each teacher to observe and give feedback to their colleagues. You might ask, why is a system like this so important? Well, to find out, our foundation has been working with 3,000 teachers in districts across the country on a project called Measures of Effective Teaching. We had observers watch videos of teachers in the classroom and rate how they did on a range of practices. We also had students fill out surveys, and what we found is very exciting. First, the teachers who did well on these observations had far better student outcomes. So it tells us we're asking the right questions. And second, teachers in the program told us that these videos and these surveys from the students were very helpful diagnostic tools.
Thank you for bearing with me as I played those 3 different clips from Bill Gates from 3 very different times within the last 10 years, from 2010-ish to 2012-ish to 2017. I just thought it was really important for you to get that perspective, to see that this is something that they've been working on for so long. Their vision for the Microsoft EDU platform has been around for many, many years. They've just needed to wait for the technology to catch up, and they've done that by building their own platforms and also acquiring companies to help them realize their vision for the education sector. Of Microsoft and Bill Gates' vision for education for the company, we can actually dive into areas where they've built up and created products and services to realize that dream. So the first thing we're going to talk about, which Bill kind of talked about within one of those videos, is Khan Academy. And so Khan Academy is just a nonprofit educational organization that does short videos for everything from physics to algebra to Spanish to every kind of educational platform. It is a nonprofit organization that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has contributed over $9 million to since 2008. Now, I know the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation isn't Microsoft, but they're very much in line and in tune with one another and their overall vision, because education is so important to both of their platforms, to both Bill and Melinda Gates and to Microsoft's platforms. So I think there's a great overlap there. And then so Microsoft has actually been very proactive with the Khan Academy, including building and deploying their Windows Universal Windows Platform app for Windows, Xbox, Windows Phone way back in the day whenever the Windows Phone was still a thing. So they've kind of embraced that. And then so they actually have Khan Academy plugins within Office 365 as well that, you can publish the apps through the business store. So we'll get all into that. But so Khan Academy is just one way that they've embraced education. Google's also backed Khan Academy, as there are other tech companies, and so I don't want to think that Khan Academy is only Microsoft, but it is a product that Bill Gates loves and Bill Gates backed with his own money, so obviously it's a product that Microsoft has also ushered along as well. So beyond Khan Academy, we have Microsoft Imagine, which is formerly Microsoft DreamSpark. And so basically the slogan for Microsoft Imagine is dream it, build it, live it. And so the Imagine Cup is a $100,000 grand prize tournament for developing any kind of piece of software or platform and then having a competition for students. And not only that, but Microsoft in the past with DreamSpark actually gave students MSDN licenses tied to their school. And this goes for college students and grade level students. They've since don't have the MSD license anymore because they also have Visual Studio Code and other open source and free platforms for there. But they do give you they give students Windows Azure credits. They give free training on Azure Labs for Computer Science on GitHub. They have an Imagine web store where they can go get the free software and or school discounts that their school may actually provide for them. This includes public schools, private schools, and even college and higher learning institutions as well. So the Microsoft Imagine and DreamSpark before it are a platform to get students involved in application development, computer science, those sorts of things. So Microsoft Imagine is a huge deal and it's a great thing. And then so building off of that, we have Microsoft Small Basic, which is a programming language and associated IDE for Microsoft's simplified variant of the basic programming language, which is intended as an easy programming language for beginners that was released in October 2008. It's no longer updated, but it kind of morphed into Kodu and the Kodu Game Lab. So Kodu is a visual programming tool like Scratch. So if you've done the Stanford CS100 class on YouTube, Scratch is it's a visual logic-based programming language. And so Kodu is a visual programming tool, much like Scratch, that Microsoft developed. And it's based off the ideas with Logo from the 1960s, which is another just version of Scratch. And then Kodu Game Lab is the IDE developed and released for free from Microsoft's Fuse Labs. And Kodu was released first in June 2009 and is still actively updated today. I looked at the website today. This visual cartoony looking programming language is meant for kids. And so that kind of guides us into the next area, which is Project Spark. Project Spark was a video game and game platform that was on Xbox and Windows 10 PC that was released several years ago that is basically taking the Kodu and Kodu Game Lab and wrapping it in a video game platform. And then so you were able to use this very visual game design mechanics and game programming mechanics, and people could create their own games and create their own universes within this Project Spark. It was actually very, very, very cool, and it ran for like 2 or 3 years, and they actually shut it down. It was free, and then it was paid, and then like you could sell like your little games you created and stuff, and it just never gained traction. I think because again, it's a programming language, and so it wasn't very user friendly. It wasn't very, Minecraft, which we're going to get to in a few minutes, was just a much, much easier bar of entry, I think. And so Project Spark was just fantastic. I met the Project Spark team whenever I was at PAX West like 6 or 7 years ago, and they were just really, really cool people, and they were doing some really cool things. But all this is kind of based around that same simplified programming language that Microsoft Small Basic, which is Codu, and Codu Game Lab, which is also Project Spark. They're all kind of like the same amalgamation of the same idea, which gets us to the next thing. So Microsoft kind of has Codu and Codu Game Lab are still in support, but MakeCode, so MakeCode, all one word, Microsoft MakeCode brings computer science to life for all students with fun projects showing immediate results with both block and text editor at different levels. So again, the block level editors is that drag and drop programming language, just like Codu, just like Codu Game Labs, just like Project Spark. Or once they actually get past that, they can actually go and do the actual code. And I believe that most of the code's like JavaScript and things like that, and some C# and things. I haven't gotten too far into it, so but MakeCode is basically a whole programming platform that Microsoft works with third-party tools or third-party providers to actually build things and provide things for the MakeCode. And so if you go to the MakeCode website, then you can actually work with, so like Microbit is a company that has a tiny programmable computer that is supposed to be for, basically you program this tiny little computer and you can follow the steps on how to do it and the tutorials and things. And so it gives kids, like, they can do a couple lines of code, and this little robot and this little computer can do these cool things, right? So you're getting these kids involved within these programming languages. Then there's also another partner, Circuit Playground Express, which is an introduction to electronics and programming from Adafruit, the company Adafruit. Then there's Lego Education Mindstorms. And so actually there's, with MakeCode, you can go there, and I think it's makecode.mindstorm.com, I think is the website, or something like that. But so you can take their Lego Mindstorms Education EV3 block systems, and you can program Legos using JavaScript from this MakeCode website, which is really, really cool. Then there's Grove Zero, which is a color-coded and magnetic electronic modules that teaches kids about programming, electronics, design thinking, and logic, and that sort of thing. And then there's another one called Chibi Chip, which utilizes the Love to Code system. Their Love to Code system. Again, it's an entry-level software installation IoT type system. And so, again, I encourage anybody who's interested, like getting your kids involved or getting young kids involved with computer science and programming and things like this. This MakeCode is fantastic, and it's Microsoft.com/MakeCode, MakeCode. And it's all one word. And there you can look at all the other partners they work with, that you can buy their little things and build their stuff from there. But we haven't even talked about the greatest one yet, which is Minecraft, but we'll get to that later. So basically, Microsoft's built this programming thing, this low barrier of entry visual programming language. So you get them started with the drag and drop programming language. Then you get them moving on to JavaScript, another actual programming language within this MakeCode platform. So that kind of gets us to the Microsoft stores. So the Microsoft brick and mortar stores have what they call STEM Saturdays, where teachers, students, and parents can drop by their local Microsoft stores on Saturday mornings and do projects. They have like an intro to robotics class. They have free and new coding workshops. I think the really hot one right now, they have the free Harry Potter Kano coding kit. So Kano, K-O-N-O, is the Kano coding computer. I eventually backed it, the first one ever, on Kickstarter for my nephew, who was like 7 or 8 at the time when I got it for him. But basically, it's like this little Arduino or Linux-based system that they code and make their own little computer, and it's very, very cool. But very, very cool. And so Microsoft, in their stores, they sell a Harry Potter Kano kit that has like a magic wand, and they program the magic wand to do cool stuff. And so you can go, again, this is all for free. So if you live in a city that has Microsoft stores, you go to microsoftstore.com, and you can look at, and you can register for these STEM Saturdays and do these sort of things. Like they have another one, like How Does Sharks Swim? So they build like a joystick for this one. I'm trying to get my nephew, I have a little 7-year-old nephew that I told his mom to get him registered for one here in Houston for the Harry Potter Kano kit. So I'm looking forward to hearing back from him on how he liked it. So if you have a Microsoft Store near you, you can go take these kids to these hands-on workshops using these fairly expensive, or at least, relatively expensive, 40, 50, 70, 60, 70 bucks, hardware and stuff like that they just kind of let you do a builder workshop right there in the Microsoft Store on Saturday mornings. You can call and register, you can register online, or you can register in person for these. I would register before heading there, before just showing up on a Saturday, because they may be crowded. We just don't know. You just don't know based upon your location. Then also another class that they have at these Microsoft stores is Make Hustle Happen, which is start your own business or champion a cause. So they learn from NFL heroes. I imagine they have NFL curriculum. They have curriculum developed by and some NFL players, where NFL, not developed by NFL players, but where NFL players are kind of leading the training on video or whatever. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the Surface commercial where the two Tennessee Titans players have a cupcake shop. I imagine it's something along those lines, just to kind of get kids in a creative entrepreneur mode. And so again, this is at Microsoft stores. It's free. It's kind of like Home Depot or Lowe's. You could go and build a free birdhouse on Saturdays and stuff like that. So it's just a cool way to get the kids in there, get them working with other kids, get them talking about things like robotics, and most of the Microsoft stores probably still have 3D printers and stuff. So it's just cool stuff to go, and it's free. Just take them to Microsoft Store and you go do that. And so if you see this, it's all about the coding, right? They're trying to get kids into coding. They're trying to get kids into learning early on. So they have the Kodu click and drag, programming language, which they've migrated and kind of made into the MakeCode platform that they've working with partners. And then you can go into the Microsoft Store and you can do these coding workshops using this MakeCode system, and then or MakeCode platform, and then kind of go from there. So that kind of gets us to the next area, Flipgrid. So Flipgrid is an award-winning platform that empowers the students' voices. So students capture short videos to share ideas and experiences and feedback with their classmates on topics that the teachers define, so the educators define. And so kind of again, in the previous podcast, I kind of said it's Microsoft Teams meets a Yammer meets a Snapchat kind of thing. And so they have dialogue back and forth about what is important to them, or what their feedback is, or what their answers to the questions are. So the teachers will pose a question, and then the kids respond with video. The teachers have found that kids are way more engaged whenever they respond with video. Kids who will maybe shy or may have a tough time talking to people will just open up if you just point a camera at them. It's just every kid's got Instagram and Snapchat and all that kind of stuff, and so they're used to just taking little selfies and just being involved and being kind of silly and goofy. And so they've just found that that's a really cool system. And so Flipgrid was a startup that Microsoft purchased last year. I think it went through in June or July or something along that, maybe in August. And I talked about it in the acquisition, so if you don't want to talk about that, but I'm not going to go too deep into Flipgrid, because I do plan on having a complete show dedicated to Flipgrid. But Flipgrid is 100% free, so it's something that Microsoft has an ad. Basically, they purchased it as an add-on for the Microsoft 365 for Education platform, and just to provide for people for free. And you don't even need to have Office 365 to use Flipgrid. And Flipgrid is free to all educators, whether you're in college, whether they're in primary school, whether they're in Sunday school, anything. You can create and go make your own grid and invite people to take part in your training and your lessons and those sorts of things. And the key thing about this is, and we're going to play a clip from some students, this gives students a voice. And so students are used to being in a hyper-connected world, right? But they also want to know that their voice matters and their opinion matters on what they're doing and what they're learning. And so Flipgrid is a fantastic platform for that. We're going to listen to these students talk about the power of their voice and why Flipgrid is kind of awesome.
I think it's important to have a voice because it means that we get to speak up. It gives you a chance to speak your mind.
Sometimes not everyone's heard and everybody has an opinion.
So other people can know what you believe in.
You should never underestimate someone, because you never know what they are and how they are.
It is important to have a voice, because if you want something to say, you should be able to say it.
Adults shouldn't be the only one that get to make decisions, that get to tell about everything they like and what they know.
Because adults don't always know what the kid would think.
For a lot of these issues, kids have an inside perspective. If we don't learn to speak our minds and take part in the community, what's going to happen to the community?
You're involved and you know what's happening in your community. We can inspire other people, show the world who you are.
You get to share your ideas and you get to say what you want.
You need to have a voice to speak loud and give your ideas, because your ideas might change the world.
I'm Evan, and I have a voice.
My name is Jocelyn, and I have a voice. My name is Jess, and I have a voice. I have a voice.
I have a voice.
I have a voice. I'm proud of my voice.
And you need to hear it.
So as you can see with the tone of that video, that basically they're trying to give kids a voice, trying to let kids know that they are special, they do have great ideas that they can share, and they can collaborate, right? And Bill Gates covered this within one of the interviews from earlier in the podcast, back whenever in 2012 when the interview was. They were trying to figure out the platform to innovate and to be there for the students. And Flipgrid is that platform. Flipgrid, along with Office 365 and some other things we're going to talk about, but it is a very innovative and very unique platform that just draws students in and draws educators in as well, as they have a unique perspective and a unique dynamic as they interact with one another.
It is amazing to watch what kids will say to a computer screen that they won't say to a teacher. There's a level of honesty that comes out from kids. You see more of their natural side, or sometimes more of their personality comes out when they're making a video. It's very personal. A lot of kids who are timid to speak directly to a person will share all kinds of things on a Flipgrid. So to me, it's a tool that very easily lets kids have a voice and be heard with very little work on the side of the teacher, other than asking the question and giving the space for that question to be answered.
So I think it's just really cool that the platform that Bill Gates was talking about in an interview 8-9 years ago that we played earlier, he was talking about the platform, and Flipgrid seems to be that platform, or at least part of the platform, that is giving those students a way to engage and to take advantage of the technologies that they have available to them. And one key takeaway from this, if you remember Bill Gates' TED Talk, he says that educators don't have feedback, but educators can get feedback within this platform as well. So an educator can ask questions to other educators, asking if they think they're doing things correctly, or if they think they're going about it the right way, or just in general, they can ask for feedback based upon whatever they're working on. And it's just a platform that, just like the students can get feedback from other students, and the students can create dialogue with other students, educators can do that as well with private grids, or even open grids, is kind of whatever they want to do. So, grids that are just between the teachers, or grids within the students and the teachers, or grids just with people across the world. I mean, who knows? Now that we've discussed the history and kind of the background of Microsoft Education and their goals for education, we can actually just talk about the overall goals for Microsoft's 365 education. And the goals for Microsoft 365 education is simple: to empower educators to unlock creativity, promote teamwork, and provide a simple and safe experience in a single, affordable solution for all education services. So Microsoft 365 goes beyond just Office 365, and we're going to kind of dive into that now and say that, it is literally a infrastructure in the box, or an all-in-one solution for schools and for places of learning if they so choose to utilize those services. And so obviously the cornerstone of Microsoft 365 education is Office 365 education. Office 365 education includes Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And then also OneNote can be added onto that, as can Skype and Microsoft Teams. All three of those are free apps that you can install and use at your leisure. So they can be installed and used within Office 365 education as well. And so OneNote is a huge part of Microsoft's education initiative. And OneNote helps students learn to be organized, collaborate, and be proactive when learning, while also providing the teachers with a single pane of glass for reviewing and grading their papers. And OneNote actually has, for Office 365 education, OneNote actually has a class notebook creator. So the teacher creates a class notebook and then individual notebooks for the students. The teacher can see all students' notebooks, review them, and kind of keep on track with them and see what they're doing, and just making making sure they're not falling behind, and so they can see their notebooks at any given time. And then also they can turn in tests and quizzes and those sorts of things within the class notebook. The OneNote team has released lots of great features for the class notebook, including containing handouts and class notes and homework and quiz sections, and then you can have class notebook sharing so you can share between teachers. So again, there's that feedback loop again, right? So you can share your class notebook and all your students' class notebooks with the principal or with other teachers in the same department or all those sorts of things. And so everybody can kind of just monitor and keep an eye on everybody and see if they're struggling and help out. So again, there's that dialogue that you're creating, that feedback loop, right? And so the fact that you can share those notebooks across people within the same school is really, really important. Now let's talk about Skype in the classroom. Skype in the classroom is creating global citizens and is live learning personified. Using Skype, student educators alike can talk to other students and educators all across the globe. And thanks to real-time translation, the students don't even have to be speaking the same language.
Hi, can you guess where I live?
¿Te encuentras en América del Norte?
Yes. Do you live in central Mexico?
Sí. ¿Te encuentras en Estados Unidos de América?
Yes. Do you live in a capital city?
Sí. ¿Estás cerca de Seattle?
You're very close to Seattle. Are you in Mexico City?
Sí. ¿Estás en Tacoma?
Yes. Very good guess.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Do you like living in Mexico City?
¿Te gusta vivir en la Ciudad de México?
Aquí está muy lindo.
Here is very nice.
What do you do for fun?
¿Qué haces para divertirte?
Voy a las playas de México.
I'm going to the beaches of Mexico.
I like to swim.
Me gusta nadar.
A mí también.
Me too.
Where in the world do you wish to travel?
¿A dónde en el mundo te gustaría viajar?
A Rusia.
To Russia.
¿Y tú?
And you?
Everywhere.
Sería increíble algún día verte en México.
It would be amazing to see you someday in Mexico.
I would really like to visit you sometime.
Me gustaría mucho visitarte algún día.
A mí también.
Me too.
That's right. With the Skype real-time translator, Star Trek is here. And the final aspect of Office 365 education would be Microsoft Teams. The goal of the classroom experience in Teams is to empower the generation that embraces technology as their first language and encouraging their developing voices and helping educators implement learning strategies for the future success. Nearly every other aspect we've talked about thus far, Microsoft Teams is all about collaboration, and it provides instant feedback platforms for students and teachers alike. The Teams classroom experience has also been expanded to include functionality with an immersive reader, and then enabling teachers to speed grade via the Assignments tab with rubric grading. Moving on to the fun stuff is Minecraft education. Microsoft has partnered with code.org to create code training using Minecraft for grades 2 and up at code.org/Minecraft. Minecraft also has its own MakeCode site at minecraft.makecode.com. Microsoft has also developed the Minecraft Education Edition and its supporting curriculum as part of Microsoft 365 for Education. In short, Microsoft has developed an entire immersive curriculum utilizing Minecraft Education Edition and Microsoft 365 for Education. Beyond the programs and platforms Microsoft also provides various toolsets to be used for managing the Office 365 subscription, including device management utilizing Microsoft Intune for Education. Microsoft has also developed and provides free training for the Microsoft Innovator Educator Program, or MIES. The Microsoft Innovator Educator programs are designed to help educators move along a pathway from those who are just beginning to integrate Microsoft tools into the classroom to becoming a leader of innovation and education. There are 3 levels of Innovator Educators, including Microsoft Innovator Educator, Microsoft Innovative Educator Trainer, and a Microsoft Innovator Educator Expert. Microsoft provides free training and resources for this Microsoft Innovator Educators programs. There is also the online Microsoft Innovator Educator community, which is a place to discover, research, share, and collaborate with other like-minded innovative educators. Currently, there are over 4,000 Microsoft Innovative Educators across the globe. So beyond the software and the platforms, what else is there? Well, there's hardware. Microsoft has partnered with many of their OEM hardware partners to offer very low cost, entry-level options for school districts and educators for their students. This includes affordable notebooks start at just $189, including the Lenovo 100E and the HP Stream 11 Pro, which goes up to $219. Then there are dynamic 2-in-1s that start as low as $299, including the $299 Acer TravelMate Spin B1 and the $299 Dell Latitude 3189. So if you recall, way back when we first started this podcast, we talked about how Microsoft was competing with Google and their Chromebooks. It's very important that they have partnered with hardware vendors that can provide low-cost entry-level solutions. Microsoft also heavily discounts Microsoft 365 with hardware utilizing bundles, including the all-in-one Minecraft cart. The all-in-one Minecraft cart includes Minecraft Education Edition licenses, includes Microsoft 365 Education, including Teams and OneNote and Skype, and it's bundled with the device hardware of your choice, and then a Brentford Cube Cart device storage that looks like a Minecraft grass block. So it's actually pretty cool. So basically, if you buy the all-in-one Minecraft cart, you get a steep discount, and the teacher and the classroom gets a cool-looking Minecraft cart to hold all of the hardware whenever they're not in use. Now, what do you do if your school currently does not have Microsoft 365? You have some options. Obviously, as Bill Gates said in the interview earlier, you should be trying to get involved at the school and to mentor students and to help the teachers and to get involved. But second is funding. You can get grant funding from the government. And this includes the federal government, the state government, and sometimes even the local governments, and even the Department of the Navy. So I'm going to run down a quick list of grants that are available that you can apply for STEM computing STEM grants. And so this is just a selection of someone. I go to grants.gov, https://www.grants.gov, and you can find a whole slew and a whole list of all the grants available for education purposes. But here's ones that Microsoft recommends via a white paper. If you go to this podcast notes, which whatever platform you're on, the notes will be under it or on it. Or if you go to msft.today and you go to the podcast post, we will have the notes with all the links to all this documentation for you. You can go to the top grant programs for STEM education equals, the top one is STEM Plus Computing Partnerships Grant Program, or STEM Plus C. And the source for that is the National Science Foundation, or NSF. And it awards between $250,000 to $2.5 million per recipient for up to 3 years. So you can get up to $7.5 million in grant for the STEM Plus Computing Partnerships. And the deadline for this, to submit for this, is spring of 2019. And the program details are at nsf.gov. But again, if you go to the notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to it, there will be a link to those program details. The next one is the Computer Science for All program. The Computer Science for All grant programs, or CS for All. Its goal is hopes to provide all students the opportunity to participate in computer science and computational thinking education in pre-K through high school. And the source of these funds would be, again, the National Science Foundation, or NSF. The awards for this one are $300,000 to $2 million for up to 4 years, so a total of up to maybe $8 million. And the deadline for this is February 12th, 2019. That's less than a month away. So February 12th, 2019. The program details, again, are at nsf.gov. You can also get it from grants.gov, or you can get it from the notes of this podcast wherever you're listening. Next up, the Navy and Marine Corps STEM Education and Workforce Development Grant Program, or ONR STEM. And this one seeks proposals for developing innovative solutions that directly support the development and maintenance of a diverse, world-class STEM workforce. This is for grades 9th or higher, so if you have a high school that you're trying to get funding for. And the source of this is the Department of Defense Office of Naval Research. And it awards up to $750,000 for up to 3 years, so over $2 million. And the deadline for this is September 27th, 2019. And the program details can be found at onr.navy.mil. Again, that's onr.navy.mil. But if you look at the notes of this podcast, you will see that there. Next up is the 21st Century Community Learning Centers Grant Program. It supports the creation of community learning centers that provide extended learning time opportunities for children, particularly students who attend high poverty and low performing schools. The source of this one is the Department of Education through each state. So Department of Education funds come through your state's Department of Education, and the awards are determined by your local and state agencies, so it's different by states. And the deadlines also vary because it's a state agency again. And you can get that www.2.ed.gov. You can find out more there, or again in the notes of this podcast. And then finally, there's the Education Innovation and Research Program grant programs, or EIR. It provides funding to create, develop, implement, replicate, or take to scale entrepreneurial, evidence-based, field-initiated innovations to improve student achievement and attainment for high-need students. Rigorously evaluate such innovations. The source for this, again, is the Department of Education. The awards is $4 million maximum for up to 5 years. Wow. So it's $20 million total. That can't be right? $20 million total? The deadline for this one is late spring or early summer 2019. There is no hard deadline as of yet because it took them so long to pass the 2018 budget. Again, our government's currently shut down right now, so all of these may be pushed back more. But for full overview of all available grants, please visit www.grants.gov. Every year, the U.S. government gives out more than $500 billion in grants. $500 billion. If your school is a low-income school, I would definitely apply if you don't have Microsoft 365. Even if you're not a low-income school, if you think that you can be a thought leader and an innovation leader for schools, apply for a grant. It never hurts. Also, look for your state, county, and city grants as well. And maybe there's grants for corporations within your current city as well. Who knows? If you don't have the funding, don't let that stop you. Be proactive. Go to grants.gov and see if you can get a grant for this. If you can get a grant, and the grants can include full hardware, full software. So the kids get all new laptops, they get all new 2-in-1s, and they get Office 365, and they get Minecraft EDU, and all these other great things. Don't let that stop you. And training for their teachers, and all of that sort of stuff. So don't let that stop you. Money should not be an option. My thing, I've always been told, never take no for an answer. When you're bugging the state, unless you're talking to the governor and they're turning you down, there's always someone you can escalate it to, right? That's the way I look at it. I hope that some of you who have children and or who are helping schools, school districts and schools and teachers, that you will reach out and hopefully get some of these funds, because these funds, if we use it or lose it, right? So use as much as you can as the grant money to get federal funding through your state to help pay for these technology improvements. Finally, Microsoft Learning Tools availability. Microsoft is all about being inclusive and learning for all students. So Microsoft Learning Tools availability, again, if you check out the notes of this, there's a periodic table of learning tools for availability, and it shows you all of the extensibility that Office 365 and Microsoft 365 provides for all students. And so we're talking about hearing impaired students, we're talking about vision impaired students, we're talking about students who have trouble speaking, or students who have Spanish for a second language. And so there's everything. They have Microsoft Translator, and so Microsoft Translator can be used to help dictate for deaf students. It can be helped to do instant translations for English as a second language students. So there's just all these great tool sets, and please just check the notes. I've taken meticulous notes for this podcast. And if you have any questions about any of this, hit up the notes. And with that, I think I'm probably done. This was a lot longer podcast than I expected it to be, but there's so much great information. If you have students, if you have kids that you know, and kids that you love, and kids that you want to help succeed in life, try to get them Office 365 and Microsoft 365 in their education center, because the collaboration with things like Flipgrid and Microsoft Teams and Skype and all these other great things, they can do some tremendous things. And also, obviously, let's not forget Minecraft for Education. They've taken a video game that everybody loves and they turn it into an education platform. And then also, hey, even if your kids already have Office 365 or Microsoft 365 at the school, or if they're already at Google Shop and you can't get them like that, take them to a Microsoft store, get them in some coding classes, hit up the coding training, hit up the MakeCode website, which is microsoft.com/MakeCode, and get them programming. Again, we're going to have to all be a DevOps lifestyle. Automation is going to change our lives. And so prepare your children, prepare the kids in your family, prepare your nieces and nephews and granddaughters and grandsons, and especially the ladies. We need more girls in technology, so hopefully we can get more girls in the development aspect of it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm sorry I kind of rambled here at the end. It's gotten really late, and I'm high on Dayquil because I've been sick for 5 days. But thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I hope you like this. I hope you like more. The next episode is in 2 days and will be about continuing education. So for all of you guys who are already out of K through 9, for all you folks that are already out of pre-K through 12, that one will be for you. And what you can do to get free training and to utilize a lot of the same cool tools that they are utilizing at Microsoft 365 for education. All of you teachers out there, thank you so much for what you do. All of you educators, all of you guys who help spread knowledge every single day and help learn every single day. Thank you so much for what you do. That's what this is about. That's why I do this. I like learning every day. I hope you like learning every day. I hope you're teaching your kids to like learning every day, because that's what it's going to take in the future. Spiral out. Keep going. Have a good one. Finally, Microsoft fans, I'm here to call you to action. For too long, we've been inundated and attacked with misinformed, misguided, and ignorant news and coverage about Microsoft. Well, to that, I say no more. With your help, we can defeat the ignorant and lift up the technologically oppressed by spreading the word about Microsoft, their products, and their people the right way. So I challenge you today to stand up for the technologically oppressed and help spread the word about Microsoft today. Subscribe to this podcast and share it with your family, friends, and colleagues. Write a 5-star review on iTunes, support it on Patreon, and follow Microsoft Today on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I can't do this alone, but with your help and God willing, we can come together to defeat the tyranny of misinformation. Until next time, Microsoft fans, good luck on the battlefield in your fight against ignorance, and Godspeed.